Hello and welcome to our series of webinars on ocean literacy. Today, I first introduce myself. I'm Olga Mashkina and I am the coordinator of the Horizon 2020 project on ocean literacy, which is called Responseable. And we are organizing the series of webinars on ocean literacy. Today is our actually fourth webinar. Gary, can you move the slide?
Yes.
We have co-organizing this webinar together with Jerry Last. He is our partner in the Responseable project. He's working with the ProSea Foundation, and you'll hear more from him today, in fact, because I am just giving a small introduction, and he will take over after. Yes. Today we will be talking about connecting businesses to our oceans and what are the opportunities and challenges of ocean literacy for economic. In our previous webinars, we had already three. We talked about ocean literacy and what it means and what are the challenges for other groups. But before I go into this particular webinar, I would like to remind some of our listeners who haven't maybe joined us before of why we talk about ocean literacy. Next one. Jerry. So maybe some of you know what ocean literacy means, maybe don't. But in fact, ocean literacy is a new term for all challenges, and you know it by other names, for example, awareness raising or capacity building or ocean education. This term actually comes from the US. First, it was mentioned in the Galway Statement of Transatlantic Cooperation. There's a lot of projects and initiatives were started then. It was mainly focused on the education in schools, but nowadays it's become a focus of research projects and many initiatives in Europe as well. So, for example, projects such as Sea Change and Responseable were the ones who take over and develop research on ocean literacy in Europe. It also, this term is now traveling and gaining importance for both science education, training. You find it in policy, you find all kind of actors talking about ocean literacy, even though, as I said, term is new. But it's becoming very important for other industries, especially for achieving the blue growth and to make sure it's sustainable. If we can move to the next slide. Let me ask you, do you know who we can call an ocean literate person? In our quest for it, we discovered that it is whom we can call the ocean literate person is the one who is aware of importance of the ocean, and not only they understand what is human influence, our influence on the ocean, vice versa, and that's also not all, that they know how to act better to protect the ocean and to seize the opportunities that the ocean offers. And what we've found out in our project is that it is an issue for everybody. It's all of us are responsible. It's children, parents, citizens, consumers, professionals, economic actors, civil society, policymakers, scientists, you name it. So we're all responsible. And if we can move to the next slide, Jerry. Now, yeah, I come to the point why, well, what we want to achieve with these webinars on ocean literacy. Every time we invite a few people to share their perspectives with us, we share a bit of our findings from our project, and we'd like to discuss collectively how we can build a better or more effective ocean literacy in Europe, and how we can mobilize all part of the society for enhancing ocean literacy. And at the end, we also like to know where we need to put further work. and how we can actually widen the European community of practice of ocean literacy practitioners. So because we all do some kind of ocean literacy work with different parts of society, so the question is, how do we get to do it better? What are the practical recommendations? Can we move to the next slide? So you may ask why we do it and what we expect. These webinars run every second Thursday of the month. We have different target groups. We already had webinars where we looked at how to do ocean literacy with children, with consumers, what is the effect of behavior change, how it's connecting to when we know something, do we act? And there are two more coming on economic actors today, on the blue growth and effectiveness. The synthesis of these seminars and webinars with the key messages will help us to, or they will contribute to the final conference or the forum on making the change happen, which will take place in February or beginning of March of next year. And it will also become or bring an input to policy making when we actually translate the main findings to the policymakers. Next one. This I'm not going to go through all of this text that I have, but just to say why is it important, why we want to target the maritime professionals, you may ask. There is a question of there is a skills gap, there is education that is offered in Europe and labor market needs. There's some issues of lack of communication, the staff being retired and not getting the same education. The image of marine sector is, well, it depends where, but sometimes not so popular. Not so many young people want to go into that profession. Now, we also want to know what type of careers the young people would have if they choose to be a maritime professional. There's all these issues that are at stake, and we're also talking how do we improve or bring the new knowledge to the old, let's say, old sectors, the people who already work in there. And in fact, maybe question is how we can make the blue economy sectors more attractive and exciting for young people, and how we can maybe help the people who are already working in that sector to get the knowledge that they need, because they are professionals, they know it. And what is very often challenging in this group is there are economic actors and there are conflicts of interest between them. So teaching them about different things is challenging. But today I'm not going to be the one who will be talking about it, because today we have our partner from the project, Jerry, who is going to explain to you exactly why we do it, who are these maritime professionals, and how what's the best way to do it. And then we will turn into our panel and our audience to see how exactly we will get to solve some of these questions. To add, maybe if we can move to the next slide, but actually there's been already several initiatives on both policy level and different EU level, national level. I'm just going to bring one example that to bridge this gap, the DG Mare have started the Blue Careers initiatives, and they developed a blueprint for sectoral cooperation on skills, where these programs help to establish cooperation platforms between businesses and education at both local, regional, and transnational level. And this is where ocean literacy becomes as one of the key points, because we need to know what we're going to teach to whom and how. Next slide. Now I think I'm going to stop to hang over to Jerry, but before I do this, I want to tell a few words to those who haven't used Zoom before. So as you noticed, as a participant, you are all muted, except for our panelists. And you can use chat button to ask questions. This is not moderated, so all of the participants will receive it, and this way you can share some of your examples of feedback or ask questions. If you have a specific question to a panelist, please use question and answer button, and this way all the panelists will see it and they will react. If there is some specific issue, please raise hand if you want to have some intervention. However, we would not have much time or space in the webinar to give you a floor. So if you do this, please explain it maybe in your question and answers button. Next one. And now I am very happy to introduce you to our panel. So first of all, as I already said, today the co-hosting with me is Jerry Lust. He is a course leader with maritime professionals from ProSea. And Jerry will introduce himself. I'm also very happy that Esther Luton could join us. She is a commercial director from Aquaculture Stewardship Council. Some of you may know this organization, maybe some not. And I would not say much more because I think maybe Esther would, you can say a few words when you answering the questions to introduce exactly what you've been working with. But as you know, she was working more with the retailers and the different seafood brands and to connect that type of organizations. We're also happy to have Emma Cunningham with us today. Emma comes from Marine Conservation Society, and she worked with a marine leader. And lately she's been working from the business perspective to connect with the organizations and both actually connecting society and producers. And I think it's going to be very interesting to hear your perspective on these business actors. And we're also very happy to welcome Jean-Yves Pradillon to join us today. Jean-Yves is working with the Pôle Mer Atlantique. This is an organization which is a cluster of different business organizations. And also he's teaching and developing a course from ENSTRA and on the marine renewable energies. So all of you will get to say a bit more about what you do in specific as we move into our questions. But I'm very happy that you'll join us today. And I think at this point I will give the floor to Jerry. I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Jerry, the floor is yours.
Can you all hear me? Yeah, all right. Then I'll start with just briefly introducing myself. There we go. I'm Jerry Lust. My name is Jerry Lust. I work for the ProSea Foundation already for a bit more than 3 years now. And that's because I have a passion for storytelling, to talk about nature, to talk about sustainability, but especially with the people who, in my opinion, matter a great deal, matter the most. And that's the people who actually are at sea and actually work at sea and actually can change things at sea, the maritime professionals. That's why I work for the ProSea Foundation. The ProSea Foundation is an educational foundation, especially for maritime professionals. So the only thing we do is educate and work on education and advise on education for maritime professionals. Maritime professionals in shipping, maritime professionals in maritime services, from dredging to the windmill industry to renewable marine energy, all that kind of stuff, gas, oil, but also fishermen, the fishery sector. And we do education in a number of ways. We do it in a lot of training, in a lot of courses. That's mainly my piece of cake. So I like to train the people, and actually, a great week for me is when I have a course, when we have 30 of these captains in front of me, and I have this dialogue with them about sustainability, about the sustainable development of the sector. Beside the courses and trainings, we do all kinds of different projects, but they are all focused on education of maritime professionals and sharing knowledge between them and us and scientists. That's basically what we do. And why do we do that? Why do we focus on maritime professionals? Well, to kickstart this webinar, I'd like to show you a video we produced as partner in the Responseable project, and this shows what kind of economic actors there are at sea. And this shows just one sea as an example, the North Sea. There we go. Just have a look.
Our magnificent North Sea, important for us in many ways. 5% of fish caught worldwide comes from this North Sea. The North Sea is used by ships transporting goods, oil, and passengers. Sustainability targets add a substantial number of wind parks. All these activities make the North Sea very busy, and you thought that was it. In addition to these activities, the North Sea is shared by all countries that border it. Every country has its exclusive economic zone where a lot of activities take place. Let's take the Netherlands as an example. Its economic zone is used for military exercises, natural gas and oil exploration, sand winning for coastal protection through beach replenishment and gravel extraction for the cement and concrete industry, windmills, nature protection, fisheries, and the list goes on. Just like on land, areas in the sea are increasingly set aside for nature protection. The North Sea might be busier than you think, and that's only increasing. That is why it is more important than ever to coordinate the activities.
So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. This shows that at just one little sea, the North Sea, there are so many different economic actors, so many different maritime professionals, so many different businesses doing something at that sea. And in the future, that's only going to increase. We're going to do more and more with the ocean. And that means that there are more and more maritime professionals working at the ocean. So we can see that people are very much connected to the ocean, through their businesses, but also through daily life. But especially those people working with or on the ocean. And their daily choices impact the ocean. They decide whether or not to throw something overboard, or whether or not to do something else that might impact the ocean or contribute to sustainability of the ocean. So that's why this webinar focuses on the people, the human element, the maritime professionals of those economic actors working at the ocean. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to focus on three main questions. The first one is, why is it important? Why would it be important for maritime professionals to be ocean literate? What's the importance of those maritime professionals? Question two then is, how can you connect to a target group very different from you? Because we have to realize, of course, that we as scientists, as teachers, as educators, as whatever we are, we think very differently than the maritime professionals, because our lives differ so much and our perceptions and our opinions differ so much. But if you want to make them ocean literate, you have to do it in a certain way. And then we're going to move on to question three. What are the challenges and solutions in effective ocean literacy communication with maritime professionals? So I'm going to walk you through these three questions, and also going to give the floor to some of our panelists to react on how they perceive these questions and what their experiences are with working with maritime professionals. All right? Then we're going to move on to question one. Why would it be important for maritime professionals to be ocean literate? Well, first of all, there are very different maritime professionals. You have fishermen working in the Wadden Sea. You have the fishermen working in Africa. You have the fishermen working in with different techniques. You have seafarers, you have people at the ports, you have people securing containers, which you see on the bottom right picture. So you have all these kind of jobs and more jobs for maritime professionals coming into play. But there's only one thing they basically have in common. The one thing is that they work at the ocean, but the second thing is that their job is changing rapidly. And to explain that, I'm going to show you a video of my colleague Tim Haasnoot, who's in the Responseable project as well, explain this on a conference. So here's another video for you.
And if you look at the work of marine professionals, then it has hugely changed, drastically changed over the past couple of years. My grandfather used to be a fisherman, and so in the past I went out to sea, There was freedom. Nobody cared about what you were doing. And after a week, sometimes a couple of weeks, you return, and then you struck forward with the news, but in the meantime, no contact with the rest of the world. You live in the vacuum. He says, but if you look now, as a fisher, you're on the fish, surrounded by a lot of people who all have an opinion about you. You know, regulators, NGOs, consumers, they all have an opinion about you. They influence your job. It is drastically changed. And we say, okay, because there is such change in marketing consumer demands, but also the environmental challenges we're facing nowadays, and high regulatory pressure, that means that they need new skills and new knowledge. And that's what we try to provide here in this course.
So as Tim is explaining, the maritime sector has changed a lot, and the work for maritime professionals has changed a lot. And that's why ocean literacy has become more and more important for maritime professionals, for their work and also for the impact on the ocean. You know, because one, the work has changed, but two, their role in sustainable development has changed as well. More and more people are involved with the maritime professional industry. And if you take a look at the study of maritime professionals, what did you have to study to become either a fisherman or a seafarer or whatever? At first, it didn't include anything about sustainability or didn't include anything about the ocean as a whole. That's because it wasn't necessary at that time. But nowadays it is. But we still have a lot of maritime professionals not knowing a lot about what sustainability is or what they should think about it. They only know the regulations, they only have the procedures, but they don't have the understanding which they might want and need. And if we talk about, all right, if we're going to continue to a maritime sector which is more and more sustainable, then we say you have three things that are important to reach that sustainable maritime sector. You need regulations. MARPOL is just one example, but you need international regulations on what and what not you can do. You also need technology to be able to achieve that regulation. So oily discharge of water, the discharge of oil, for example, or the waste management on board, all that kind of technology, hybrid ships, building of windmill farms for marine renewable energy, all that kind of technology. You need it. You need technology, you need regulations. But you also need people, the maritime professionals, to be able to understand why the regulation is important, why they should need to follow it, and also the technology. They need to understand why the technology is there and how to use it. So maritime professionals, they need to be competent, but they also need to have an understanding of why these regulations are there. Because if you don't understand why a regulation is there, why would you want to follow it? Right? But if you understand why it is there, you're it's far easier for you to follow the regulation. So maritime professionals are crucial in the sustainable development of the maritime sector. And we as ProSea, we call that the human element. And the human element is often forgotten when we talk about the sustainable maritime sector. So I'm curious to ask you, this is the very first poll we're going to ask all the participants. Who of you has had contact with maritime professionals? So I think Olga is now going to pop up the poll for everyone to fill in. So please fill in the poll so we can get an idea of if you have had any contact with maritime.
You should now have a pop-up screen on your computers and you can answer the question. Have you had a contact with a maritime professional? Okay. Looks like there's some people had it just last week, quite a few. We're still waiting for some votes to come. About half of our audience have voted. Yeah, still there may be some people who never had met with them. Interesting. Still have about 30% of the audience still thinking whether they met them before or not. Who are these maritime professionals? Can you see what it is? Maybe just the last few minutes, if you actually okay, I think we can close the poll, and you can see that in fact our audience, you can see, we are quite well in terms of meeting or seeing the maritime professionals. Half of our audience have seen them last week.
Last week?
Yes, and 28% have had a contact with them last month, and 11% last year. And one or two people, so about 5–10% had never had an encounter with a maritime professional. So this is our audience today, Jerry.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all for your input. It's very interesting to see that a lot of you apparently do have contact with maritime professionals. So I think we have a lot of experience in the virtual digital room. So be sure also to put your ideas in the Q&A and put your ideas in the chat function and in the forum after this webinar, so we can all learn from each other as well. All right. I'm going to move on to the second stage, which is why are maritime professionals important, and why is the human element important in this road to sustainability? And I'd like to give you one example. This is an example of a study of research being done a number of years ago, and it was about solid waste. And they asked, all right, to all the people at sea who threw solid waste overboard, why did you throw that waste overboard? What was the reason for you to think, I'm going to throw this in the ocean? And what was interesting, they did a study and they calculated the results. And what was interesting, that the 4 main reasons of why people threw waste in the ocean was: 1, easy way to get rid of things, just easier. 2nd, it's not my responsibility, it's of the captain, or it's from the company, or it's whatever. And the third reason was convenience. It's, again, easy. The bin is over there, but the ocean is right here, so I just throw it in the ocean. And the 4th one is they don't understand the consequences. So these main 4 reasons have to do with behavior and habit, and with knowledge and awareness. And this is, for me, is the reason why I work for the ProSea Foundation and why I work with maritime professionals, because I want to change this. I want to change them, that they do understand the consequences, that they do think it's their responsibility, and that it's not just an easy way to get rid of things, but that there's an easier and better way to do it, and it's just to take care of it responsibly. That's what I want to achieve. And that's also the power that the human element that maritime professionals have. They make the daily choice to either throw something overboard or keep it aboard and handle it properly. They can make many of these choices, and this is just one example. Just another example, this is an example provided by the Liberian Ship Registry. And they said that one of their officers, you can read the text box over there, that one of their officers actually made a choice to contact the office, to contact the port, to see when he has to arrive there. And then he made the decision on his own, of course with communication with the office, to slow down. And by slowing down his vessel, he saved 10% of the fuel. It was his choice, it was his proactive behavior. And that's because he knew what carbon dioxide was doing to the atmosphere, because he knew that fuel costs money as well. So you can see the power of the human element. I'm going to leave this example for now. And I'd like to ask a question to the panel. Maybe at first to Jean-Yves, because I understand that at Polymer you have been involved in the postmasters of the renewable marine energy expert. That's a postmaster. And I'm interested in, what the postmaster is and what kind of role the human element or the maritime professional plays in that master. Could you maybe explain a little bit? Oh, sorry, we can't hear you, Jean-Yves. Maybe unmute your Zoom.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, of course. This program is dedicated to people interested in taking care of producing electricity, mainly electricity, but other kind of energy in the ocean. So in the usual quotation for renewable marine energy, we are including all the systems or devices that can harness the energy from the sea itself. But in the French acceptation, we also include all kind of wind turbines, fixed and floating wind turbines. That is to say, the way to produce electricity in the sea, even if the main energy is not coming from sea. We have no other program by now in France regarding this specific topic. So we have no regular in the usual licensed master PhD system. There's no training dedicated to that. So that's the reason of this postmaster's degree, is to bring people having a master degree to the specific topic of designing a system to produce electricity in the ocean. What I can highlight is this program is an engineering program, but what is interesting is we have less than the half part of the lectures dedicated to engineering, that is to say, to design the devices, and the rest is just to understand what energy can be harnessed, what are the interaction between the systems, the wind farms, for example, or the tidal stream systems or whatever, with the environment. I mean, on the life at sea, including vegetables and animals, but also to the coastline and all the effects such system may have. And also, and I think it directly leads to your topic today, what are the social impact of such systems? I mean, for instance, the usage conflicts or acceptability, which is very, very important today to deal with. An engineer in the next decades will not be allowed to design a system without taking into account the acceptability of the system.
All right. Thank you very much for your input. I hope everybody was able to hear you, because there seems to be a little problem with your microphone. I'm not sure if you can fix it. I can understand you, but it's a bit challenging.
Okay, I will try to fix it.
Thank you very much. But thank you for your elaboration on the postmaster. It sounds very interesting, and I think it also shows that there's more and more need and value for properly, the education of maritime professionals, because there's more and more getting this sort of jobs in the world, in the economy of the ocean. So I think it's very important that we offer education for that. So thank you very much for your elaboration. I'd like to ask one more of the panel members, just one more in view of time, if you'd like to reply to this or explain in your sector what evidence you see of the human element, or why the human element is important. Emma or Esther, who of you would like to respond or give your ideas, experiences?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Esther, did you have anything?
Give it a start.
You can go ahead, Emma.
Okay.
Quickly
well, for us, I guess we're coming at it in a slightly different way, because most of our projects and work here in the UK we wouldn't be able to do without the volunteers, and that's the biggest part of our human element, the people within our sector. So all of our work that we're trying to do in terms of lobbying and campaigning, changing industry and getting the UK governments to actually bring about changes is totally supported by all of our volunteers. We've just recently had our Great British Beach Clean event. We had nearly 14,000 people all come out on the beaches on one weekend. They're collecting vital data of the types of litter on our beaches. That's all citizen science data, so all from volunteers. It's a very robust survey. We give them all of the support, but there's no way we could bring about change without our awesome volunteers. So I just wanted to say that.
So for the human element is for you guys very important, because you rely for a great deal on the enthusiasm of people, of volunteers.
We're based on charity. We have an awful lot of work we need to do, and we empower our volunteers to help us do that.
Right. All right. Clear. Thank you very much. Esther, then I'm looking to you. In what way is the human element important in the aquaculture sector?
Thank you, Jerry. I'm working for a certification program, certification and labeling program. So we are encouraging consumers globally to make a choice for sustainably produced farmed seafood and create basically a market incentive for producers to make a change. So aquaculture, is done in the oceans, lakes and rivers. 70% of the globe is water. The amount of seafood that we will consume by 2050 will only further increase. So that only shows the importance of that sector to basically feed the world. But also, sketching out what we do shows the importance of the human element. And that really goes from a consumer making a daily choice, what to eat, back to the producer who can be in Vietnam, in Ecuador, in Chile, in Canada or in Norway, making daily choices about the amount of feed they use on the farm, how they're going to clean the farm. So that's the human element throughout the entire supply chain that needs, incentives towards the right sustainable direction.
All right. So it's quite similar to the fishery and shipping industry I work in, that the producers make daily choices to impact or not impact the environment.
Yes, but we do that through a market-based incentive. So if we have consumers who make that choice, and that's also the human element, then there is the incentive for those producers. And clearly,
it's a strange sound. Maybe someone needs to use the microphone.
So I only wanted to say that, we see a rapid development of the sector of producers, lots of knowledge, lots of technology, but without, those producers being known on how to do things and being rewarded for the way how they do it, it will not last. So that makes the human element crucial in a persistent change.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. So we have Jean-Yves, who works on a master to make people, educate people, make people an expert in the renewable marine energy sector. We have Emma, who works with a lot of volunteers and needs the human element in that way. And we have Esther, who recognizes the importance of the human element in the aquaculture sector, of the producers as well as the consumers. And we have myself seeing that the human element is important in the shipping and the fishery, where they make daily choices as well as in all the other sectors. So I think we have a very interesting group. Olga, I'm looking to you. Shall we move on to the second question, or do you want to ask some questions to the panel?
Absolutely. I think we need to get going, and we can definitely move to the second question.
Right. Then I won't waste any time and move on to the second question.
Yes.
Because the second question is very interesting, in my opinion, is how can you connect to maritime professionals? How can you connect to a target group which is very different from you? Because if you talk about producers of aquaculture, producers of fish in Vietnam, or you talk about fishermen in the Netherlands, or about renewable marine energy experts or volunteers, sometimes you work with people which have a very different mindset. And if you want to do something with them in collaboration, you need to understand how they think, and you need to be able to connect to them. And what we often think is that we are right. But what if you're right and they're wrong? Then you have a challenge to overcome. But also, what if you're wrong and they are right? That's an important question. But actually, it doesn't even matter who is right or who is wrong. What's important is that you understand that you don't need to be right all the time. You need to understand how people think, what their perceptions are. You need to consider that you don't have to be right all the time. You need to consider that you have to listen to the people you're working with, to the maritime professionals, because they know a lot. And doesn't mean that they're wrong if they say something you don't agree with. It means that they think differently. I'd like to give two examples. The first one is if you take a look at this photograph. Now, we often show this in our trainings, and we ask, all right, what do you see? And what's interesting, a fisherman would say, oh, that's a great catch. That's a fisherman making a lot of money, doing his job very well. He's a great fisherman. An NGO working to save the oceans and to save the fish stocks in the world might see this as overfishing. A citizen who doesn't know a lot about fishing, doesn't know a lot about the ocean, might see this as mass murder. Or a different citizen might see this as, this is just the way it goes, this is just fishing. So the way you think, the way your opinion is, that determines what you see in this photograph. But we all see the same photograph, but we perceive it in a different way. The same goes for this photograph. Greenpeace. Greenpeace thinks, okay, all right, this is one of our guys. A citizen might see this as a hero, as an environment protection agent. But a fisherman might think something very different. Then I'd like to play a video of me recording this graph, because this graph is very important in our course. Let's take a look.
So this graph is one of the main messages of our lecture on climate change and carbon dioxide. And what you see happening in this graph is you see the carbon dioxide parts per million on this axis, and you see that scientists estimated what the level was 400,000 years ago, and what's been doing every time that's since, how it's been going down and going up again. And they've been able to estimate that by doing ice core research. So researching air enclosed on the land ice in Greenland and Siberia and that kind of stuff. And this is a very interesting graph because you see a number of things happen. You see that the carbon dioxide parts per million, they go down, they go up again, they go down again, very slowly. It takes 150,000 years, goes up again, goes down again in 100,000 years, goes up again rather quickly this time, then goes down again in 150,000 years, and then something interesting happens. We rise a little bit, and then suddenly, bam! We move beyond this threshold. This threshold is what the Earth has experienced before, what we know how the Earth has been reacted to. But now we are beyond. Our current level is way up above this threshold. The second thing we see happening is that we don't take 100,000 years or 150,000 years to go up to this point. No, we do it in 60 or 70 years. So we do it very quickly, and we do it above this threshold, what the Earth has experienced before. So that's why this graph is a very interesting graph to show. But what happens when you show it to people from this little fishing community in the Netherlands, from Urk, they believe, and they are entitled to believe that way, that the Earth has been around for 10,000 years. So what happens when I show this graph is they don't look at the fluctuating carbon dioxide, they don't look at that we've broken through this threshold, they don't look at how fast we do, they say, sir, this is not right, the Earth hasn't been around that long. So if you start a discussion not knowing that, not being aware of that, not considering that, your discussion will fail at that point. Your message will not come across because you will have to be discussing the timescale of the Earth, and you're not going to win that because they have been raised up by knowing that the Earth has been around for 10,000 years.
So I'm going to stop it right here. For me, this is one of the clearest examples of how perceptions can change. We perceive the Earth as being around for 400,000 years or even older, millions of years of scientists, but people from different communities, different backgrounds, think something very differently. But you have to consider that if you start talking to them, you have to consider their perceptions. So I'd like to move on to basically a concluding remark on this question. Is how can you connect to a target group which is very different from you? Well, first, focus on a very specific target group. The general public doesn't exist. The general public is a collection of all kinds of specific target groups, and the specific target groups think differently. So know who your target group is. Who do you want to reach? Are they volunteers? Are they people interested in a master? Are they people producing fish in Vietnam? Know who they are, know their perceptions, know also your own, what are your own perceptions and what flaw might lie there, and then value and respect the perceptions of your target group. And I think that's very important. It doesn't mean, you don't have to be right all the time. You don't have to discuss with fishermen, is the Earth around for millions of years or 10,000 years? That doesn't matter. You just have to say, all right, we believe something different, but we can still talk to each other. But you need to know, value, and respect their perceptions. I'd like to ask one panel member to respond on this. Just one, because we're running a bit late. Do you see difference in perceptions as well, and how do you work with that? Because that can be quite challenging. Who would like to say something? Please raise your hand. Emma, Esther, or Jean-Yves? Esther?
You all can reply just very briefly to say which are the tips.
I will reply very briefly. Yes, even within a seafood supply chain, a producer has a very different perception than a consumer. And a producer in Vietnam has a different perception than a producer in Norway, because you can't compare the countries. And the key to connect to your target group is two things. It's be curious, ask a question, try to connect rather to defend what you would like to defend. So that's key, I believe. And secondly, it's also about being clear and honest. And of course, I know there are cultural differences that come into play globally as well. But if you are genuinely interested, and if you are open about where you come from, you will also get a more honest answer about what the other is thinking. And that gives a basis for dialogue.
That's some great tips. You mentioned be curious, connect rather than to defend. I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And be clear and honest.
Yeah.
That's mainly your main 3 tips. Thank you. Someone else from the panel like to add something? Jean-Yves, yeah?
Yes, do you hear me? It's a better way now.
Well, it's the same, but we can understand you a little bit. But if you speak slowly, I think it's better.
I will try to speak slowly and louder.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that when I told you that you have a lot of interest in the social aspects, I mean, I will add to what Asa told us, is you have to understand what the other side is thinking about. I mean, obviously, when you're trying to convince somebody that you will install a wind farm close to the shore, just in front of their windows, they will not be happy with that. But if you explain what the result will be for employment, for economy, to reduce the pollution at sea, then you are able to convince an opponent to join your initiative.
Okay, so if I understood correctly and can hear you well enough, you said that explaining the effects of pollution is important as well.
No,
is that what I got from you?
Explaining that you will provide a system preventing from pollution.
All right, preventing from pollution and explain the system.
And also another social impact you will have is with professionals. For instance, mainly as you mentioned before, with the fishermen. When you install a device to produce energy at sea, you will prevent them from some areas to work, and so you can explain them that they are able to find another way of working or other solutions. It will take longer for me to explain exactly, but you can convince, including the professional at sea, that such a solution can be helpful for them. For instance, to create a natural reserve in which the fish resource will have a sheltered area.
All right, thank you. I think, Emma, for now I'm going to move on to the next bit, and then afterwards I'll give the floor to you to respond. And I hope that's okay with you. Yeah. Because the third question is very interesting as well. I'd like to discuss what are the challenges and solutions in the effect of ocean literacy. And one, of course, is understanding the perception. The perceptions are different. Esther already gave us some great tips for that. But there are more challenges, of course, and more solutions needed. Olga, shall we skip this poll for now?
Yes, I guess We can, yeah, because we're running out of time.
We're running out of time.
It would have been really nice to know where people get the knowledge. Maybe
if you guys could all fill in this question at the forum, of where do you think maritime professionals get their knowledge? That might be interesting. Is that the way we can solve this, Olga?
Yeah, we can try.
All right.
Can people see it? For some reason, it's. Yeah.
All right. Oh, there it is already. Okay. Oh, this goes rather quickly.
So while people already getting to think about it.
Yeah.
We would like to know what type of knowledge you rely on, and when you are working with professionals or yourself as a professional. And oh, nice! People are getting active. Maybe we woken them up.
Yeah. We say we're running late on time, and people are like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So what are the results, Olga? What are they?
The results are coming. I still have about half of the audience who voted, so just there are quite a few options I've put there, and I asked, I think, people to make the most 3 relevant, which is always very difficult. I think we're done.
All right.
So, interesting enough, the education and professional schools are the main type. As you see, the colleagues and partners were the other high ones. And then the local business professional chapters is the third, maybe the most important choice of our audience.
Okay.
So as you see, scientists are a bit on the lower side.
Yeah.
And other, I guess we will have to maybe ask people to clarify in the chat what the other things they use that we don't know about, because we would like to know about. Okay. Yeah. So back to you, Jerry, and I think we're going to be running a bit late. I hope it's okay with our panelists, and because I think we still have quite we'd like to know a bit more from you about the final question, which is very important.
Yeah. So we're going to move on, but it's very interesting to see the results, and I strongly agree that the maritime professionals get the most from their education, and also from specific training and from their colleagues and partners. But then you see that that's often very limited where they get the information from, because of course they're often at sea, so they don't have time to attend all these conferences or whatever, and they normally aren't very interested to go out and speak with scientists. So it's one of the main challenges of getting maritime professionals to be ocean literate is, of course, reaching them and making them interested in this subject. But even when you are with them and you get the chance to discuss something or to do a course, there's one main challenge, and this is the only point I'm going to make, and then I'd like to do a discussion with the panel members, is that getting accepted by a target group is basically the most important challenge you have to overcome. What we say at ProSea Foundation is the effectivity of your course, your presentation, your dialogue, whatever, your ocean literacy communication, is the knowledge you have times the acceptance. And what we often see is that many scientists, many communicators, they have a great deal of knowledge. So the knowledge of your course, the knowledge of the master, the knowledge of it's you could give 100 points to it. It's on detail. It's very often very correct. But if you're going to transfer that to fishermen, you also need to be accepted. Your organization needs to be accepted. You as a person need to be accepted. And the story you say, how you say it, and when you say it, is very important as well. If your knowledge is 100 points, but your acceptance is 0, 100 times 0 is still 0, so the effectivity of your course will be 0 as well, because the door will be shut, they won't listen to you, they won't believe you. So you need to work on your acceptance. And I want to give just one example, I'm just going through this real quick, is the acceptance is that you need to focus on what you say and also on how people perceive it. And here's one example. This is by a Dutch organization, Dutch NGO, Environment Association. And what they did is they published this awesome report on windmill farms and the risks for those windmill farms for nature. There were all kinds of nice graphs, and it was really on scientific level. It was top notch. They presented it really well. So the knowledge was sky high. Knowledge was like 100 points. So we were interested and enthusiastic and wanted to use this report to show fishermen, to show seafarers what the effects of windmills were. So we wanted to discuss this, and we wanted to share this report. But then we started reading through all the alineas in the report, and this one graph showed up. This one alinea showed up where they said some things that were different than what fishermen perceive. So they said things about the fishing industry in the Netherlands. They said things about the movement across the earth of the North Sea. They said things about that the North Sea nature is under pressure, that the fish stocks are under pressure. And while that can be right or can be wrong, that doesn't matter, but fishermen perceive something different. So when they read this bit, they won't believe the entirety of the report. And that's a shame when you talk about communication to maritime professionals, that you not only have to consider what is right or what is wrong, but also how do these people respond on this. So if this little alinea wasn't in the report would be very much useful. But just because of this little alinea, it will not work properly. And that's a sad thing. And I think that's why you need to focus on acceptance of your story. So create acceptance, otherwise your effectivity will be zero. And that's what I would like to add to this discussion. And now I'd like to move on to the panel. When we talk about effective ocean literacy communication, what are some of the effective solutions you found out? What works for you? Who would like to respond? Maybe Emma, since I didn't give you the floor in the last question. Do you know something out of the top of your head?
I don't know if I fully understand the question. I mean, I'm working with a lot of local businesses and individuals, and just trying to actually get them to understand that they can actually make a difference is one of our sort of biggest challenges here in the UK to the marine.
All right. And how do you do that?
Kind of challenge. But in terms of the solution in dealing with that, you know, they all have a responsibility to the businesses that we're working with to reduce their single-use plastic. So it's just really key to cover some of the things you've been saying, like educating them on the issues and how all of our actions and how by cutting down on certain single-use plastic items, they can really help make a difference to all the amount of litter that's entering the oceans. So in terms of effective solutions, it's engaging with businesses perhaps that we wouldn't normally engage with and getting them to understand how they can be part of the solution and empowering them to do something about it.
Empowering people, I think that's very important as well. Yeah. Part of the solution. I experience this with a lot of my courses as well when we talk about climate change or some of these big global problems like plastic litter across all the earth. People tend to be feeling very powerless, you know?
Yes.
What's something that I can do to this big global thing? Exactly. And then it's a challenge to make them think and believe that they can be the difference.
Totally. And the other issue, I don't know in other countries, but particularly here in the UK, unless you live by the sea, it's really hard to get people to care. It's out of sight, out of mind, and it's trying to also explain that link between inland and how everything is getting to our oceans. That is, by using infographics and further education. That's a way that we're finding to help address that sort of gap.
Yeah. All right. And for the maritime professionals in the aquaculture sector, Esther, what are some effective solutions to work with those target groups?
A brief reflection on the example you gave, because I think it's crucial. You gave an example where fishermen, didn't agree by the fact that there was pressure on nature. In every relation that you have with an economic actor, it could very well be there's something that you disagree about. Yes. But then it's much better to agree what you disagree about and have the dialogue rather than not sharing it. Because if you don't do it, you don't build the trust. And without that trust, you can't come to a solution.
Yeah, yes,
So
again.
I do not necessarily agree that that paragraph shouldn't be in there, but if you have a trustful dialogue with an important economic actor, it's really about managing that process in a proper way and doing respect to the relationship. And, you know, I've been in situations where I changed jobs and I said exactly the same sentence to a fisherman. And in my old job, you know, it was accepted, and in my new job, it wasn't.
Yeah.
That's the reality. But then it's about agreeing what you don't agree about, be transparent about it, and still invest in a relationship.
That's a very interesting discussion, and I agree with you. You shouldn't not say something because you're scared of what they think. But the point I was trying to make with that report is that this report can no longer be used by us to read it by them independently, because they will read a little alinea and they will throw the report away, and that's a shame. But
I understand, but you can also say, hey, you have your view, the NGO has their view. Let's scrap out the paragraph and let's look at the content and let's discuss that. You know, and if you know, if you want to change, every stakeholder has to take own responsibility in making that change. If a stakeholder, whether that's a person or an organization or a complete sector, doesn't want to do it and they can't step over it, they don't want to take the responsibility, nothing will really happen. So you will not get into a solution. So you have to find that space where people are willing to move, and that's not easy.
It's not. No, and that's why we're talking about it right now. It's a big challenge. Yeah. And just to come back to that report, what's interesting that in a conversation or in a course, you can definitely say those things that in the alinea we used as an example. You just need to be aware that they perceive it differently. But then if you explain it, and if you time correctly when you say it and when you try to explain it, you can definitely say it. You can definitely, and I think we should, like you said, to take your responsibility. You need to be clear and honest as well, and agree to disagree. That sometimes is a thing. Like the lifetime of the Earth, you can agree to disagree and say, all right, it's fine to believe what you want to believe, and then we just move on and talk about the content. But I just think it's vital that every time you communicate something, you think about, all right, how is this going to be perceived? And should I say this right now, or should I wait to say it in a different manner, or in a different timing, or in a different strategy? And for every case and every target group, that is different. Yeah, but you shouldn't avoid the dialogue, you shouldn't avoid the discussion, but you should do it in a strategic manner.
And that's a skill set. I remember that I was talking to a group of trout producers in a country. I will not say the country. And I was in the conference program under the chapter Other Problems. So, you know, if you're introduced as another problem, you know, the sector is confronted with, still it's my responsibility to make the connection to the audience, to tell what we do as a program and how we think we can contribute and how they can engage in it, but also be very open and transparent. You have to make the call. This is what we offer. And in the end, I made the connection with them. So it requires some skill set as well to be able to do so. And I believe, you know, organizations like yours can play a role in achieving that.
And what do you think? So that's a very interesting statement. You need a specific skill set to be able to do that. What do you think should be in that skill set? What are some of the most important things a participant of this webinar has to consider to be able to do just that?
Again, be curious, listen very carefully, and be clear, and don't start defending opinions. I think it's also about what not to do rather than what to do.
Yes, and sometimes be very objective and not always be subjective.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Jean-Yves, do you have a response on this as well? Do you have something to add?
Mainly, I'm sharing what you have said previously, but what I want to add maybe is in your first statement, work in communication with economic actors. I will want to have a comment there. an economic actor must be regarded with a wider definition. I mean, beyond the professional is also all the sea users. I mean, for yachting, for leisure or whatever, you are not only a professional who has concern with the activity on the sea or ocean. So I mean that what we are saying now for professional must be applied also to other actors.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, you're saying that not only maritime professionals play a role, but everyone involved in the ocean, also leisure people.
Yes.
All right, all right. Thank you very much. I'd like to move on to the last poll.
Yeah.
To ask all our participants, and this is about the future. So, what do you think if you take a look at the whole content of this webinar? What do you think can help to build a better ocean education for economic actors in the future? Where should we put our efforts? And with we, I mean the participants in this webinar right now, in the Responseable project, and all partners involved. Where should we put our efforts if we want to build a better ocean education for economic actors, maritime professionals, the leisure industry, master programs, aquaculture sector, shipping, fishery, everything? The poll is live right now, so please fill it in, because that's a very interesting question.
Yeah, we would like to know, based on what we discussed, whether I think now we pick up a few more options from our panelists, but some things that we would like to know how you feel about it.
I'm filling it in right now, and
I think this.
Yeah, you can't choose.
You cannot choose?
Three, it's only one.
Can only enter one.
You cannot choose?
It's only one trade.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, you
right.
can only choose one.
It's all about priorities, so that's good.
All right, you have to choose only one. I'm sorry that there's been maybe a small bug in setting up the question. So have to do just one. Go ahead. Even more difficult.
You have to think really well.
We know all of them are important, but maybe just if you had to do one, what would you do? And I think what Esther was saying, the special to develop or focus more on the skills of how we do it, I think it probably goes with the first two choices, where what type of things we teach also in our training programs, or what kind of knowledge we teach. It is actually maybe more focus on skills and being open to talk with a different audience rather than be in conflict. And I think that's maybe what I've learned, that could be something that people don't talk too often about, because they always focus on the specific factual knowledge, the scientific content, because the other things maybe work more on the business communication, but I'm not sure how much of it's talked in maritime sector. So it's a good match. Okay, I think we can end the polling, and I share results with. I should have talked about it while the poll was going on, because now many of you have chose this one. But as you see, the developing the specific training programs, like probably the ProSea or the one with Jean-Yves, they help to teach this sort of skills. And I see that work with young professionals got attention of quite a few people. So yeah. I stopped the poll. Oh, okay.
That was interesting, though.
Did I share the results already? Yes.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I'm very sorry we're running a bit late. But I think we finish now. Let's just maybe wrap up very quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna make a summary, Olga? Make a wrap up?
I think we're gonna, just to save time right now, I think it was very good to get perspective from all of our panelists. I think our audience could react in the question and answers or in chat if they think something has been missing, or they would like us to elaborate more, or whether they agree or disagree what we've discussed. There will be also a chance to do it in the survey that will pop up after the webinar will be finished. So there will be some space to share your opinion. You can also just write to us directly, because our project continues for another 5 months, so we will be able to tackle a few more things and take your opinion into consideration when we produce the final recommendations. But you can probably skip to the next slide, and just to briefly tell you that this was number 4 in our webinar series. There are 3 more to come, or 2 more to come. And you can watch the previous ones recorded online. If there's some target groups you are particularly interested in learning about, you can see. There will be the summary of many recommendations, lessons learned, that we will come up together with the panelists after the webinar. So this will also be on our website, perhaps within 1 or 2 weeks after the webinar. And this is a small advertisement for the project that in the project we did develop quite a few ocean literacy tools to target different audiences and different marine issues. You can check them on our website. And that there, as I said already in the beginning, there will be organized a forum where we will be consolidating the findings of our projects and also what had been happening in the field. And we would like to bring the views of maritime professionals, youth, and policymakers. It will take place in Brussels in February, March. So we hope that we will give the information about it as we know more, and we hope to see some of you there with us. You can skip to the next. If there were some questions that you think we did not cover today, please let us know, because we don't want to be limited in our own bubble. We would like to know what people who work with issues really think. So whether something that there was some elephant in the room that we avoided and we didn't talk, if there's something that we need to research more, do we need maybe another webinar to cover other things, please let us know either now, a feedback form, or write to us directly. And yep.
Is there a way that after this webinar, is there in that forum you create, is there a way that I can respond to questions the audience still has?
There is a space where you can write your experience reflections. There's a space where you could leave the feedback. So you will see.
Okay.
You have to check it out.
All right. So if any of you have questions to us or the panel members or to Olga or to me personally, you can leave it in the forum and we can.
You can ask. You can leave this somewhere in the forum. Yeah, and we can redirect them to panelists and hopefully get back to you soon. Okay. I think then this is it. The next webinar is on December 6th. It will focus on the sustainable blue growth and how do we get to work with ocean literacy and what does it mean for policymakers. So we look forward to seeing you then. You can also already register for this one and for the last one on January. So keep tuned. I would like to thank all of you, especially our panelists. Thank you very much, Esther, Emma, and Jean-Yves, and Jerry. Big thanks to you. I'm very happy that the audience got to see the examples from first hand, where the person who is actually educated maritime specialists brought it up.
One more thing, Olga. In this presentation, I had a lot more videos and content and things to consider. Can I upload this PowerPoint so you can go through it yourselves? Okay. Yes,
that's what we also do. That on the website, within maybe 1 or 2 weeks, we upload the recording of the webinar and we upload the slides. as well as then we would also upload the main recommendations. So very busy people can look at recommendations, and all others can download the presentation and use it as you like. It's an open source.
I would definitely recommend going through the PowerPoint, because there are many videos of my colleagues of a vision, having different views, different perspectives, and explaining about all the examples we've learned. So if you're interested in the work we do and in you know the subject we touched upon today, if you want to know more, go to the PowerPoint and watch the videos, because there's some pretty interesting stuff in there.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Then from my point, also Esther, Emma, and John-Yves, thank you very much for attending. It was interesting to see your perspective on things. And I'm looking forward to discussing more of this in the forum and you know, through email. But I think that's it from my side.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Then.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks for attending, everyone. See you in the forum.
See you.